First Hope, a short story prequel to the Red Hope series. Written by John Dries, performed by Bob Reed. Noon. Mission Control Room, NASA JPL Facility, Pasadena, California. Jason typed the last of the coordinates into the guidance computer for the Mars Curiosity Rover. These numbers would eventually tell it where to go next. He pushed the Submit button. The coordinates were encoded into electromagnetic waves and flung into space on their long journey towards the red planet. With that done, Jason slumped back into his chair, relaxed, and ran his fingers through his floppy haircut. As if on cue, his stomach growled, and he put his hand on his belly, trying to quiet the sounds of his hungry gut. He turned towards Sarah, who sat at the console next to him. "I'll buy if you fly," Jason said, nodding his head slowly to encourage her to grab lunch for both of them. Sarah stopped typing and looked at him with disappointment. She reached up and pulled her brown ponytail through the back of her NASA baseball cap. "Let me guess," she said sarcastically. "You forgot your lunch again." "I didn't really forget it," he explained, pausing. "I just couldn't eat leftovers for the gazillionth time." Sarah stood up, pointing her finger at him. "You know, Jason, sometimes I think the only reason you ride a bike to work is so you never have to make lunch runs." Jason shrugged. He saw a flash from the corner of his eye and looked upward. "Uh-oh, looks like another tour is here. We're in the lobster tank again." At the back of the room, elevated near the ceiling, was a viewing gallery that allowed visitors to look down and gawk at the likes of Sarah and Jason doing their work. At the front of the mission control room were large computer screens that showed the status of the upload and download links from all of the rovers and exploration spacecraft that NASA has scattered throughout the solar system. Sarah waved to the visitors. They waved back. Just part of the job, she thought. She sat back down and started monitoring her console, which showed the status of the cameras for the Mars Curiosity Rover. Jason turned to Sarah and asked, "So?" "I can't go." "Why not?" he whined. "Because by the time I get to my car and head out to Subway, I'll be late for the trajectory planning meeting." Jason furrowed his brow in confusion. "But that's not until 4 o'clock. "Nope," Sarah replied, shaking her head side to side. "Remember, they changed it when the new outsourced management came in? Since the Earth clock and Mars clock aren't in sync, management started to move these meetings around, looking for a sweet spot. New management, new rules. More meetings." "And I was just getting used to the new 4 o'clock meetings," Jason said with irritation. "Better learn to like it," Sarah said. "We're now meeting at 1 o'clock and 8 o'clock. "No wonder our jobs are so tough," Jason said with a frown. "Come on now," Sarah laughed. "It's not like you're working in a coal mine. Besides, we get to drive the most expensive radio-controlled car in the solar system. The only problem is that it doesn't react to our directions for half an hour." Jason's shoulders sagged. "Okay, Sarah. Looks like another vending machine lunch for me today." Ignoring her coworker, Sarah turned back to her monitors and studied the latest image being fed to them from the Curiosity Rover. It was a preliminary low-resolution image, but the background seemed to show a bright reflection. She pushed the arrow keys on her keyboard to toggle back and forth between the previous image and the new image. The shiny bit wasn't in the old images, but it was there now. She leaned her head slightly to one side. "Well, that's unusual." 1 o'clock p.m. Conference room. The entire Mars Science Laboratory team sat around a long, rectangular table. A tall, middle-aged man wearing a white button-down shirt and khaki pants stood up in front of the group. He held a yellow legal pad in one hand and a pen in the other. "Good afternoon, everybody," he said, pausing to close the door to the hallway. "Just a reminder, I'm your new manager, Howard Kelty, but you can call me Dr. Kelty." The room erupted in laughter. None of the team used the doctor that belonged in front of most of their names. However, Dr. Howard Kelty straightened his back slightly and frowned in disappointment at the group's reaction. He made a purposeful cough, and the room quieted down. So anyway, no surprises to report to you today. Do you have any gotchas or updates that you'd like to share with the group? An engineer sitting in a chair near the back corner raised his hand. Dr. Howard Kelty, their manager, pointed to him. Yeah, the engineer said, dragging out his words. Just to remind everybody, today we're running that firmware update, so responses from the rover are going to be a bit intermittent. Jason raised his hand next. I was told that the Goldstone Deep Space Network would be down for an hour, but that shouldn't affect us. We'll be getting data from the other Deep Space Network locations in either Spain or Australia during that time. Their manager nodded his head. Very good, Jason. What about your next coordinate destination plan? Sarah started talking before Jason could speak. We're still traveling through the Pahrump Hills region as planned, but, She paused to look down at her notes. What is it, Sarah? Their manager asked. I saw something kind of unusual on the latest image. A bright reflection of some type. I estimate it's 50 meters away, off to the port side. Their manager looked confused. Port side? To the left, Dr. Kelty, Sarah explained. What size are we talking about? He asked. It's a low-res scan, so it's hard to tell, but I think we should change the route so we can go investigate. Dr. Kelty tapped his finger on the desk, thinking. It's probably just some bad pixels. Nothing important. Let's just stay on course. Besides, I promised leadership that we'd get the Curiosity Rover to the end of the Elpmis range by the end of the week. As you probably know, we've seen a drop in voltage from the RTG power unit, so I don't want to risk anything by changing the plan. Jason chuckled to himself and leaned toward Sarah, whispering, Bad pixels? Sarah whispered back, New management, new brains. They laughed quietly. Are you two done? Their manager asked, obviously irritated. They both sat up straight in their chairs. Yes, Dr. Kelty, Jason said very seriously. Their manager put his notepad down on the desk and set his glasses on it. He stared down at the floor for a little too long and then slowly raised his gaze. I feel like I've probably gone too easy on this team since I got here. Maybe some guidance is in order. The engineers in the room looked worried. Their manager continued. Sarah, Jason, I know that you two make a good team, but I need you to stay focused and act professional. I didn't want to say it out loud, but my records show that you've both been written up for being insubordinate. Each of you at least once over the past 3 years. I'll consider your behavior here today to be a second strike. If this happens again, do you understand what that means? Sarah and Jason looked at each other in shock. Their manager had broken the well-known rule of praise in public, punish in private. Third strike and we're out, Jason replied. That's right, but I'm sure you'll be more careful from now on, their manager said, easing down into his chair. Just focus and keep doing your job. Anyways, we'll meet again at 8 o'clock tonight. I'll be calling in from my home, but I expect you all to be here on site. 6:00 p.m. Mission Control Room. Jason laid his head down on his desk. I'm beat. Sarah was busy jotting down coordinates that would be used for telling the Mars Curiosity Rover where to go next. During a normal day, she'd give them to Jason and he'd enter them into his guidance system before pushing submit. You should go home then, Sarah said. But you got to be back by 8 o'clock for the nightly course correction meeting. Whatever, he said with a slovenly tone. I'll try to make it back. Got to get some real food, though. Sarah stared intently at Jason. Promise me you won't fall asleep? Jason stood up and stretched, letting out a strained yawn. I promise. He looked up at the darkened visitor gallery, then walked out the security door at the back of the room. Ever since the early afternoon meeting, Sarah had been monitoring the images feeding into the JPL systems from the Mars Curiosity Rover. The image updates were slower than usual due to the firmware update, but she couldn't help notice that the reflection was getting brighter. The Curiosity Rover had captured strange images before, oddly shaped rocks with mineral streaks and unusual land formations. "We've never seen anything like this before," she thought. Sarah printed out a map of the area near the rover. As she picked up the printout, she did a quick look around her to see if anybody was watching, even glancing at the darkened visitor gallery. She laughed at her complete inability to be clandestine. "I'd make a terrible spy." With a printed map, Sarah set about plotting a new course that would take the rover towards the source of the reflection. She wrote the coordinates down on a piece of paper, not wanting to leave a digital trace. Then she put it in her pocket. "That's done," she sighed. "Time for dinner." 6:30 p.m. Subway restaurant, Pasadena, California. Sarah stood in line contemplating whether she'd get the healthy turkey sub or the delicious meatball sub. Decisions, she thought. The longtime sandwich maker, Steve, came out from the back room and settled behind the counter to put gloves on. "Long time no see, Sarah," he said with a smile. "What can I get for you?" "Hey, Steve," Sarah said, staring at the menu. "Just give me the usual." "Meatball sub it is," Steve said, reaching into the bread warmer. "Did you find any little green men today?" Sarah laughed. "Not exactly, but—" She paused. Steve stopped making the sandwich and looked up. "But what, Sarah?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Come on, you've been coming in here for years. Spill the beans." "We saw a visual anomaly." Steve went back to making the sandwich. "Oh yeah?" he said, without looking at her. "What's a visual anomaly?" "One of the rovers on Mars is sending back pictures that show a reflection. A pretty bright one, too. All sparkly." "Maybe it's just a big diamond." "Ha! Unlikely. Not much quartz or diamond in that area." "All right," Steve said. "So go drive that Mars buggy over there and take a closer look." "I wish." "Why not? You can just make a U-turn if it's no big deal." "True," Sarah said, nodding her head. "But our new manager has a deadline, and he says it's probably nothing." "Probably nothing?" Steve yelled. "That's what they said about the atom bomb." Sarah looked confused. "Honestly, I'm not sure if anybody ever said that about the atom bomb." Steve didn't hear her. "Hey, did you know that the guy who invented Post-it notes almost didn't do it because he thought it was probably nothing? He's like a billionaire now." "Really?" Sarah asked with an encouraging tone. "Yeah, he was trying to invent the strongest glue in the world and instead invented the weakest glue. I bet his manager said it was probably nothing too." "Maybe," Sarah said, wondering how much of that story had just been embellished. "Here's your sandwich," he said, handing it to her in a plastic bag. "I'd give it to you for free, but my manager would kill me." Sarah chuckled. "Management. What can you do about it, right?" "Exactly," Steve said. "Now, go drive that buggy wherever you want to go." 7:55 p.m. Mission Control Room. Sarah checked her watch for the 10th time. She looked around and saw a few engineers from other programs scattered about the room. "Jason, where the heck are you?" she wondered. Just then, the door flew open and Jason walked in holding a McDonald's bag. "I thought you might not make it," Sarah said, relieved. "Remember, no food on the consoles." Jason stopped in his tracks. He sat down at a table near them and began gobbling down his cheeseburgers. "Do you," Jason said, taking a bite, "do you have the new course correction coordinates?" "I do," Sarah said, "but you gotta see this." She cycled through the last 5 images fed to her monitor from the Curiosity rover. The reflection got very bright, but then started to fade on the newest image. Jason stopped chewing. "Wow, that was really bright. Almost sparkly." "I know, right?" she said excitedly, and pulled out the map showing her suggested new course. Look, I plotted a new course to get the rover there. Jason raised his pointer finger and waggled it back and forth. No, no, no. Remember what Dr. Howard Kelty, the manager, told us. Deadline good, changes bad. I know, she agreed, but I think we could provide him with a compelling case to change it. You heard him. He's got a deadline that he promised management. But this is an exploratory mission, Sarah reminded him. We explore, right? You explore, I explore. He's a new manager contracted from some third-party corporation. He meets deadlines and milestones. He most certainly does not explore. Sarah looked like the wind got knocked out of her sails. Well, the meeting starts in 5 minutes, Sarah said, glancing at her watch. Bring up the virtual teleconference on the monitor. Jason started the virtual meeting and invited Sarah to sit next to him. Their faces showed up on the screen. At 5 minutes after 8 o'clock, Dr. Howard Kelty's face finally showed up on the screen too. Hey guys, their manager said. What you got for me? Well, Sarah said, we've seen that strange light reflection grow stronger, and I really think we should send the rover in that direction. Although slightly pixelated on the screen, they could see their manager raise his hand up and squeeze his temples. I thought we dealt with this earlier, he said angrily. There is no time to change anything right now. Maybe, just maybe, at next month's leadership meeting, I can tell them your concerns. But it might be gone by then, Sarah warned. What might be gone? Their manager asked. Little green men? Look, Mars is dead. There's nothing there. We haven't found squat, and we're not going to find squat. Please, Sarah begged. Let me make it perfectly clear, their manager said, his face becoming bright red. If that rover deviates from the agreed-upon path in any way, you're both fired. For what? Jason asked in disbelief. Insubordination, that's what, their manager said. Third strike, remember? Sarah's jaw dropped open. You can't do that. We're federal employees and you're just some outside contractor. You just try me, their manager threatened, angry veins popping out of his forehead. Are we clear? Sarah and Jason glanced at each other. Crystal clear. 8:20 p.m. Mission Control Room. Jason ended the video teleconference. The image of their manager stayed on the screen, his eyes mid-blink. A few seconds later, he disappeared from the monitor. Well, that was fun, Jason said. I'd rather smash my hand in a car door. You don't own a car, Sarah reminded him. Touché, he replied. I need a snack. But you just ate McDonald's. True, Jason answered, nodding his head. But I need a snack to wash down all that grease. They told one of the other engineers that they were both taking a 5-minute break, and then headed out the door. The vending machine room was small, with a shade of green paint that hadn't been updated in 30 years. For some mysterious reason, the vending machines were completely empty except for pork rinds. So gross, Jason said, and yet so yummy. He began pouring quarters into the machine. Forget the pork rinds, Sarah yelled, grabbing his arm. We have to reroute the rover. Are you crazy? Jason asked, looking around to see if anybody heard them. He's gonna fire us. Sarah let go of his arm. She left the room and headed back to her desk in Mission Control. Jason got his pork rinds and then followed her. Before he could sit down at his own desk, Sarah pointed to the images on her monitor. I'm telling you, this is not some visual anomaly. Look how bright those reflections are. Something is trying to get our attention. Something or somebody? Jason asked. Sarah shook her head. Look, I know it's not aliens, but it's got to be something very special. Maybe it's a booby trap, Jason asked, chuckling like he was 12 years old. Yes, Sarah said, rolling her eyes, a booby trap. Well, that's all you had to say, Jason said, smiling. But no, still not changing anything. Sarah went silent, thinking about how best to make this happen. What if, she paused, what if I type in the coordinates while you're away from your desk? That way, I'll take all the blame. That would be completely against protocol, and I'd probably still get fired. And you'd get really, really fired. You wouldn't get fired, Sarah said. You just ate pork rinds, right? So act like you're sick and go to the bathroom for an hour. A case of the terrible trots. That may be the dumbest plan I've ever heard, Jason said, shaking his head. Look, Sarah explained. I'll type in the coordinates and I'll accept all of the blame. She looked up at the security cameras. Those cameras will see you get sick and run to the bathroom. It's a perfect alibi. Jason looked upward. While staring at the camera, he asked with unmoving ventriloquist lips, Do you think the cameras can read lips? What? Sarah asked, shaking her head, confused. He turned towards Sarah and covered his mouth with his hand, whispering, Do you think they can read lips with those cameras? Probably not, she answered. But maybe? Jason turned back toward the cameras. Using exaggerated lip movement, he said, I think Dr. Howard Kelty is a lovely man, the best manager ever. Then he turned around, away from the cameras. Okay, Sarah, I'll do it. But you're still going to get fired. But you won't, she explained. And if I'm right, neither will I if we find something amazing. Jason started eating the rest of his pork rinds. One last thing, Sarah said. Write down your password so I can log in. Jason frowned as a blush rolled over his face. He leaned over and scribbled something on a Post-it note. He picked up the bag of pork rinds and ate the last one. Suddenly, he bent over, grasping his stomach. Oh, my stomach, he said with mock drama, then began stumbling toward the door. You're supposed to be sick, not drunk, Sarah said in a strained whisper. As soon as the door was closed, she sat down at Jason's console and looked at the Post-it note. Build a bear 123. That's disturbing, she thought. Sarah pulled the list of coordinates out of her pocket. She typed them into the database shown on the computer and carefully double-checked every set. When she was done, she hovered the mouse pointer over the Submit button. Just then, the door opened, and 3 new engineers walked in, carrying their lunch bags with them. One named Zach saw Sarah sitting at Jason's console. Hey, Sarah, he said with a bit of teasing. Does Jason have you doing his jobs for him now? She smiled. No, I'm just double-checking something. Jason's in the bathroom. He wasn't feeling well. Oh, that's too bad, Zach responded. Well, second shift is here to relieve you. Go get some sleep. I appreciate it, Sarah said, nodding. But I think I'm going to stick around. We may have some unique images coming in. Suit yourself, Zach replied. He meandered over to his console a few meters away and sat down. Sarah pushed the Submit button. The new coordinates were transmitted from the Goldstone Deep Space Network array and sent through the vacuum of space toward the Mars Curiosity Rover. In 30 minutes, the rover would receive the new instructions and turn toward the shiny object. Sarah stood up, stretched, and sat down at her own console. She turned towards her monitor, anxiously waiting for the new images to start showing the rover's slow progression toward the source of the shiny reflections. Things could get interesting in about 90 minutes. 10:04 p.m. Mission Control Room. Jason came back and sat down, miraculously cured of his fake reaction to pork rinds. Wow, Sarah said. You were gone for a long time. Did you fall in the toilet? Nah, I just sat on the toilet and surfed Reddit on my phone, Jason said with a laugh. My legs are still asleep. Sarah chuckled. Zach and the second shift are here. You can go home if you want. What? Jason asked, with exaggerated shock. And miss the discovery of your shiny object? Due to the final stages of the firmware update, the stacks of ribbon-shaped images were having trouble updating on the screen. Sarah and Jason sat glued to their seats, watching the feed, waiting for at least one complete image. The stripe of an image came across the top of the monitor. It wasn't corrupted. "Do we have a winner?" Jason asked rhetorically. Then another stripe. Row by row, an image was building. A strange vision unfolded on the screen. Sarah's eyes widened. "Is that a hand?" she asked with shock in her voice. "I can't believe it, but I think so," Jason replied in disbelief. "Like the skeleton of a hand, or something." They both moved their faces closer to the monitor. On the screen in front of them was an image showing a large stone with a partially fossilized body embedded in it. Only the arms stuck out. The stone itself was glistening, almost sparkling. "Print it," Sarah said, awed with amazement. Jason printed it and wrote A at the top with a Sharpie. Several minutes later, an even closer image showed up, giving details about what looked like a skull. "Hey, Zach!" Sarah yelled. "Come over here, you gotta see this!" Zach and the other two engineers wandered over and joined the staring contest. "What in the world is that?" Zach asked, leaning in to see better. "When did this start?" "Just a few minutes ago," Sarah said. She printed out the current image and wrote B at the top. "Have you called Dr. Kelty?" Sarah grimaced. "No, not yet." "Well, you better, because this is just nuts." Sarah printed out a third image and marked it C. Halfway through the next image, the signal went black. "Oh, no, what's happening?" Jason asked. "Go check the power cell status, Zach." Zach walked quickly back to his station. "Uh-oh," he said. "The main system voltage is dropping. You know, the higher-ups warned us that the RTG power cell might be deteriorating faster than expected." "But right now?" Sarah asked in complete frustration. She stood up and started pacing. After 10 minutes, no new information had come in. "Jason, when you submitted the latest coordinates," Zach said, "did you enable the auto trigger on the surface spectral analysis?" Jason and Sarah looked at each other, not sure what to say. "Yes, we did," Sarah answered. "We enabled auto sample so that it would take a rock sample at every waypoint. As soon as it got near this fossil stone, it took another quick sample near the base and did an accelerated spectral analysis of the mineral ingredients." "And?" Zach asked, raising his shoulders. 2 million years, Sarah said, examining the data displayed in one of her other monitors. Plus or minus 500,000 years? "Wow, that's pretty uncertain," Zach commented. "Fast or accurate, right?" she joked. The monitor suddenly came back to life. "It's back! It's back!" they all yelled, gathering around Sarah's console. The image ribbons started stacking again. The 5 engineers could not believe their eyes. The image showed the fossilized hand holding a flat stone about the size of a credit card. It had some odd engravings that looked roughly like 101 on it. In the background of the image, far behind the fossilized hand, was a large pyramidal structure, with the top sliced off. The leaning walls looked like smooth granite. Nobody could speak. Sarah pushed the print button, and the image dropped into the platter of the printer. She took the Sharpie and wrote D in the corner of the picture. When Sarah turned back to the monitor, only the top ribbon of the next image was being displayed. The rest of the screen was black. It wasn't updating anymore. Zach walked back over to his console again to check the voltage. His head sank in despair. "It's gone," he said in a solemn tone. "We lost it. The Curiosity Rover is dead." "Oh no," Sarah cried. "We have to call the manager now," Zach said. "Do you want me to do it?" Sarah asked. "No. "I'll do it," Jason replied. He looked at his watch. It was roughly 11 o'clock. He picked up the desk phone and dialed their manager's home phone number. The other engineers only heard Jason's side of the story. "Hey, Dr. Kelty, it's Jason down at Mission Control." "Yes, I am aware what time it is." "Yes, this is very important. You need to come down here right away." A very loud voice emanated from the phone. Jason yanked the phone away from his ear. He hung up and looked at the group of onlookers. "He's on his way." 11 o'clock p.m. Mission Control Room. The door swung open as their manager, Dr. Howard Kelty, barged into the room. "Can somebody please tell me what's going on here?" Sarah looked around and realized that she was the one who needed to speak. "I redirected the Curiosity Rover toward the bright reflections." Their manager brought his hand up to wipe the red hue from his face. "Are you kidding me?" he asked, leaning close to Sarah. "Young lady, you are terminated." The mood in the room went cold. Only the sound of the computer fans could be heard. Sarah started to stand up and grab her jacket. "Well, hang on a second," Zach said, putting his hand on Sarah's arm. "I think Dr. Kelty might change his tune once he sees what you found." Sarah handed the 4 printed images to their manager, who then rotated them, trying to figure out how to properly view them. "Well, this looks like a—" He paused, squinting his eyes. "A human skeleton?" His forehead wrinkled up as he realized the momentous importance of these printouts. "Are there more?" he asked. Jason piped up. "No, and there won't be any more. The Curiosity Rover is dead." Their manager looked stunned. "What do you mean it's dead?" "As you know," Zach explained, "the power source was diminishing faster than expected, and it seems to have just died within the past hour." "Now?" their manager screamed, his voice rattling the glass on the viewer's gallery window above them. He slammed his fist onto the console. "This can't be happening! I'm the manager of this project!" The engineers at the far end of the room turned their heads to see what was happening. "Am I still fired?" Sarah asked. The manager was caught off guard and stared at Sarah in disbelief. "What?" he replied coldly. "Yes, of course. You disobeyed a direct order, and this wasn't your first offense. I assume I'll probably have to terminate Jason, too." Jason's eyes bolted wide open. Their manager pulled out his cell phone and scrolled down to the T's section in his contacts list. He squinted his eyes shut and winced in pain, clearly not wanting to make this call. It took a long time for the person on the other end to answer. "Good evening, Director Tankovich. This is Dr. Howard Kelty, out at the JPL in Pasadena. I'm sorry for calling you so late. I really think—" He was interrupted. "Yes, Director Tankovich, I know there's a time difference between California and Washington, D.C. Again, I'm sorry for calling so late, but can you please check your email? I'm going to send you some scans in the next minute." Their manager snapped his fingers at the engineers around him, shaking the printouts and pointing at the scanner. Jason scanned the photos and entered the email address for the administrative director of NASA, Chris Tankovich. As soon as each image was scanned, they were emailed directly to the NASA director. While this was going on, their manager explained what they'd found to his boss, who lived in Washington, D.C. Finally, their manager hung up the phone. "Well, what did the NASA director say?" Jason asked. "He's looking at the images right now and wants to have a teleconference. Can you set one up?" "Sure," Sarah answered, somewhat hoping that the manager had forgotten about firing her. They walked down the hallway to the conference room. Sarah set up the video teleconference system so that their group could see the NASA director in his office in Washington, D.C. The JPL crew adjusted their camera so that the NASA director could see all of them in Pasadena. Aside from herself, in attendance were Dr. Kelty, Jason, and Zach. They'd left the other engineers back in mission control to ensure that there was always somebody on duty. Sarah pushed the power button on the projector, and the image of the NASA director, Chris Tankovich, showed up on the big wall screen as well as the computer monitor. He was still wearing a suit, which was odd given how late it was in Washington, D.C. His image was slightly pixelated, but his voice came through loud and clear. "Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me out there?" Chris Tankovich asked. "Yeah, we're good on this end," their manager answered. "Excellent," Chris said. "So, I've been told that the Mars Curiosity Rover lost signal after these images were transmitted. Is that still the case?" "Yes, unfortunately that's true," Zach said. "The voltage had been falling steadily the past few hours, and it finally dropped below threshold." "Any chance of it coming back?" Chris asked. "Unlikely," Zach answered. "Its only source of power was the RTG nuclear source. There are no solar panels." The NASA director looked solemn. "That's truly a sad development for space exploration. But these findings are amazing. I plan to tell the president tonight." The engineers' jaws hit the floor. They'd never thought that their work would be taken to the president with such urgency. Chris continued. "I might need all of you out there to have a teleconference with President Jennings tomorrow morning. Are you up for that?" Their manager looked around the room with an uncomfortable smile on his face. "Well, actually, tonight will be Sarah's last shift here." "Oh, no, that's too bad," Chris said sincerely. "Perfect timing, though. Going out with a bang. What company is stealing you away from the team there?" The room suddenly became very cold. "Well, actually," their manager stuttered, "I had to terminate her position tonight." Dr. Howard Kelty started loosening his tie, which suddenly felt way too tight. He continued, "She purposely changed the rover trajectory against my direct orders. We can't have employees acting with such insubordination." Chris laughed. "So she changed the coordinates, but it led to possibly the greatest discovery in history?" Their manager shrugged his shoulders. "Rules are rules." "Hang on," Chris said. "I'm going to put you guys on mute for a minute. I have to make an important phone call." The engineers in the conference room saw Director Tankovich pick up his cell phone and dial a number. "Do you think he's calling the president?" Jason asked, giddy with excitement. Suddenly, they heard a phone ringing in their own conference room. Everybody looked around, holding their phones up to show it wasn't them. Their manager looked down and pulled his phone slowly out of his pocket. He swallowed hard and pushed the talk button. "Hello, this is Dr. Howard Kelty." Silence. "I thought it was a good decision." Silence. "In hindsight, probably not." Silence. "Actually, that seems irrational." Silence. "I disagree, but I will comply." Their manager's face went pale. He hung up the phone and stood up. "It seems I've been reassigned, effective immediately." He opened the door and walked out. "Holy smokes," Sarah whispered. The remaining engineers looked around in disbelief. On the screen, they saw Chris Tankovich push the unmute button. "Hi, folks. I'm sorry that you had to witness that unfortunate personnel matter. So, it seems your group is now in need of a manager." There was silence in the room. Chris continued. "Sarah, would you mind being the interim manager of your group until I find a more permanent solution?" Sarah was roiling from the emotional roller coaster ride the last few hours had brought. "I'd be honored, Director Tankovich." "Believe me, the honor is all mine, Sarah," he replied. "You and your team acted with great integrity. We may have lost the Mars Curiosity Rover, but if it weren't for your stubbornness, we would have driven right past this incredible discovery. I need your team to do me a favor now. Let's keep this to ourselves until we put out a press release. probably sometime in the morning." The engineers in California all nodded in agreement. "I'm afraid I have to hang up now," Chris Tankovich said, leaning in close to the camera. His head filled the entire screen. "I'm about to wake up the President of the United States," he said, smiling. "Wish me luck." The end.
Hi, this is the author John Dries. Thank you for listening to this unabridged audiobook, and most importantly, I hope you had a lot of fun. If you're curious about what happens next in this adventure that goes all around the solar system, well, please check out my Red Hope series of novels and audiobooks available only on Amazon. For convenience sake, I've provided a link in the description below. And if you'd like more audiobooks when they become available, well, please push the subscribe button on this channel. Again, thank you for listening and have a great day.
This has been an audiobook production of First Hope, a short story prequel to the Red Hope series. Written by John Dries. Performed by Bob Reed. Recorded by Greg White at SG Studios. Copyright 2019, John Dries.